Welcome, everyone. I am really lucky to have been invited to speak to all of you about mentorship, and I'm going to be joined by two friends that all of you definitely know, Alex Day and Meaghan Dorman. But before we get to that, I wanted to thank Perrier and Cooper Cheatham for making this possible for all of us. Cooper not only is a great friend, but he also decided to send me some of these new energy drinks that they're doing. So they're carbonated energy waters. I don't know if anyone's tried them, but at this point I've tried a lot of them, and I'm going to apologize for my manicness because they work. I think during the pandemic, if anything, we've all learned that we need to take care of each other and ourselves a little bit more. Trevor's looking at me weird because he's like, you take care of yourself. It's not something I normally do, but I'm trying. So for me, at least, most of my bartenders I know start the shift with like a 32-ounce cup of coffee and a Red Bull or two. And while it works and it's amazing, it's probably not the best thing to consume. Not speaking illy of Red Bull in any way, shape, or form, but if you read the package, everything on there is pretty much synthetic. And if there's a better option, I think it's something that we should look into. So Perrier is making these carbonated energy waters. They're actually quite delicious. They have as much caffeine as a cup of coffee. All of the caffeine is sourced or is plant-based versus the caffeine in some other companies that are actually synthetically produced. And they actually are quite delicious. So I've been drinking the grapefruit quite a bit. And I actually made a cocktail for myself with it last night. Probably shouldn't have because I couldn't get a bed, but I made a Paloma subbing this out for sparkling water or club soda. So I just did some tequila, agave, fresh grapefruit and lime, and finished it off with one of these bad boys. And here I am. So if any of you are interested in trying them, Cooper has been very kind and put his email on the chat. It's C Cheatham, that's CCHEATHAM at premiumwatersteam.com. And he promised that he will send you loads of them. So please reach out to Cooper and please drink some Perrier, but drink responsibly. But cool. So today we're going to be talking about mentorship. Alex, Meaghan, and I have all been part of the CAP program at one point in our lives, and all of us have been lucky enough to run multiple programs. And I know that I look to these two quite a bit because they're incredible at what they do, and they've put out some of the best talent in the world. And for me, this is as much a learning experience as it is a teaching experience. I'm really interested to see what everyone else does with this category. I think mentorship is something that's really important to me, and I know to both of these two. So for those of you that don't know me, I'm Leo Robitschek, and I'm the Vice President of Food and Beverage for Sidel and run all of the beverage programs for the Nomad. I was a CAP in 2009 until 2018 or 19. I was lucky enough to be a CAP, and then I was lucky enough to help run the CAP program with, some of the people on this Zoom. I'll actually let both of these amazing, incredible people introduce themselves. Meaghan, if you will.
Yes. Hi, everybody. I'm both excited to attend and contribute to this seminar or roundtable. I think we could all use it. My name is Meaghan Dorman. I'm currently the bar director of 2 locations of the Rains Law Room and 2 locations of Dear Irving in New York City. I was a CAP in 2010 and had a great experience and made some great friends, and luckily got to contribute to some seminars or some chats and things they did for the CAPs in events in the years afterwards. So I've stayed close to the CAP fam since 2010.
And Alex.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. Alex Day. I am a partner in a company called Gin and Luck, which is probably best known for a few of our bars called Death & Co. in New York, Denver, Los Angeles. I've been fortunate enough to write a couple of books, got another one coming out soon. And I get to do a lot of really fun stuff, really circling more around our bars and our growth now, but in the past did a ton of consulting, which I know we'll kind of touch on a little bit later. I was first, Leo, was 2009 the first year?
No, 2008 was. That was your year.
So yeah, so I was there in 2008 and I was traumatized enough to never return officially as a CAP, but have in the years since stopped by win at tails, to see the team, to have a cheeky, to sometimes do some of these talks, but to try and continue to be engaged, and excited to talk about this because, from CAP has really sprouted a lot of mentorship opportunities for myself and for my company and the people I work with.
Amazing. A few things to note. We want this to be more of a dialogue with all of you instead of just a monologue with us. So if you have any questions at any time, either write it in the chat, or if you're brave enough, raise that little hand, unmute yourself and ask away. Cool. So mentorship, sort of a key word nowadays. Alex, do you want to tell me what mentorship means to you? Also, I'm really interested in knowing, do you actually have a mentor or somebody that mentored you along the way? And yeah, how has it impacted your career and what you've done?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think probably true now, just as it was when I first started in the industry, was, everything was very Socratic. There was no real rules. There was no CAP program. There was a couple of cocktail books, and there were only a handful of bars doing things. So really, it became mentors that helped guide me through. And I think about it kind of in both passive or I guess active mentors and kind of tangential mentors, where there's some people who, like my early days at Death & Co., Phil Ward, Brian Miller, Joaquin Simo, Jessica Gonzalez, these people Cabell Tomlinson, Katie Steid, who like really were more active mentors, but then people who were just very encouraging in the industry over the years, like Audrey and Dale and Julie Reiner, and getting to work with Sasha Petrovsky was a little bit more active. But I think that kind of collective group really informed what my definition of mentorship is, which is a relationship that I think extends beyond goals. Like it's very easy to look at trying to help somebody to a desired result, like, doing well at Speed Rack, or doing well in another competition, or getting their first head bartender job or bar manager or ownership. But really it's beyond that one goal. It supersedes and it goes further. And in my opinion, the most gratifying ones really lasts for many years.
Amazing. And Meaghan, how about yourself?
Yeah, I think along the same lines, a lot of us have kind of carved out our own path in this cocktail land and started just as it was taking off. So, well, I wouldn't say I have a mentor per se, and might be in the market for one. I do have like a great peer group that I've been lucky to, that really talk honestly both about the success they've had and ways they've gotten things accomplished, but also like challenges that we've all faced, or just having a tough day in the business. So I think having a community that learns from each other and talks honestly is really important. I do think we're all kind of learning that mentors are more of a committed relationship than we might have used that term in the past. But I think, like Alex said, it's really an investment in being committed to someone's success for hopefully years to come, and not a specific specific job or time. That hopefully it's a relationship that's mutually beneficial as well, but that lasts for a long time, because it's really an investment in each other.
And Meaghan, where did you start bartending in New York? I forgot.
So I started bartending at an Irish bar called Coogan's.
Amazing.
And I had started bartending in New Haven when I went to college, and I was really into cocktails, and I drank at Little Branch and Death & Company, and I was kind of like, where do you get a job like this? And I was really close with the Milk and Honey fam, but obviously those people never left their jobs at that time. So I started at Rain's Law Room in 2009 when it opened, and have stayed ever since because I love it. But I would say that's part of the CAP experience for me, was that I was really into cocktails, but I was still fairly new, and it really widened my view outside of New York City, but to like this global community that we all have. And now I have friends everywhere.
That's something that the CAP program definitely, that benefits us from the CAP program, that you could walk into pretty much any city and you at least know you have a family member there. I think my story lies somewhere between both of yours. I never really had a mentor in the bar world either. But I asked you where you started working because I think you and I both started working either in pubs or in restaurants, which really weren't seen as a cocktail haven back in the day. So I would look at people like Alex, who was doing really cool things, and I would just pick up the limited books that existed and get on the limited blogs that existed and just do as much research as I could in order to try to learn. Which to me, I guess, sort of led to these insecurities that I have, which actually I think I was able to channel in a good way, because it allowed me to be very analytical and question everything I did. But it's cool because I think in a way we've got to create our own programs, which Alex has as well through his growth. But for me, I sort of looked to the outside world. I mean, in the beginning, I think I looked towards my chef because I was fascinated at how he ran a program and how meticulous they were, how dedicated they were. And I learned a lot from the kitchen in that aspect. And I think as I grew, I started looking even more outside of our walls and looking at people that were incredible managers or that ran companies in a different way to try to learn from them. So like you, Alex, I've had some, I guess, more active mentors like, Daniel Hume and then also people that I've worked with along the way, but I've had a lot of passive mentors as well that I've just read from or learned from. Yeah, and I guess like everyone else, mentorship to me, I've realized is definitely a lot more of a relationship. I think in the beginning, I thought mentorship and teaching were pretty much the same thing, but while there's a lot of overlap, I realize that they're quite different. Alex, do you mind telling me how you see the difference between mentorship and teaching?
Yeah, I mean, and these things often overlap, and I think they generally do for people who are great teachers, that they become great mentors, or that aspects of mentorship find their way into teaching. But I tend to think about it as being able to kind of isolate teaching as really getting to that specific goal, like I mentioned earlier, like trying to supersede that, or that mentorship is beyond that. But a teaching is getting some piece of information or knowledge or awareness to be understood. And maybe even to be mastered at some point, depending on what your goal is, right? And then you could even say like apprenticeship is really kind of going deeper into it and going, building a bit more of a connection. And then, mentorship, that true kind of relationship, I would say it really is a unique experience between two individuals. And that the mutual trust that is developed between two individuals has to be very powerful, where the relationship between a teacher and a student, yes, it requires trust, but I feel like it's a different level of trust. And that, I know we'll get into it, but I think is one of the greatest benefits, but also one of the greatest challenges and issues with mentorship too, is like, how do you develop that trust and create that bond to really meaningfully impact somebody and their work or life?
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I think that there's a ton of overlap, but I think for me, being a teacher is just sharing your knowledge through instruction explanation. I think to me, it involves more formal lessons. It's a very different type of relationship, as you said. I think they both are relationships, but one's a very different type of relationship than another. Where to me, mentorship, I guess, is a little less informal and a lot more personal and relational in nature. And I think for me, where a teacher provides knowledge, a mentor provides experience, if that makes sense. A lot about
or wisdom.
Yeah, or wisdom. Yeah, totally. How about you, Meaghan? Do you see any sort of differences in mentorship and teaching, or?
Yeah, I would say similarly. And I think for people like us, the people we mentor might be people that we meet in these, for us, it's probably training capacities. For example, if you are, opening a bar, the main goal is to get this open, get everybody on the same page. You do want them to understand the philosophy and the why behind it, not just the actual specs and recipes. But I think out of that big group, a couple of them, I think of my head bartender at Dear Irving Gramercy right now. I've been very invested in his growth for a long time. And even if he left Dear Irving, I would pick up the phone anytime. And, I want to see him continue to grow. So I think we might meet that way in a training, teaching kind of moment, and it can evolve into a mentorship role, which again, is an investment over time and a lot of sharing of experience.
Sorry. Yeah, you said some keywords, which I love. I think for me, teaching does focus on what you're doing and how you're doing it. And mentorship does focus on why you're doing it. What is that saying? Teach a person or give a person a fish and they'll have dinner for the night or something. Give a person
Teach a person a fish. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of the same way,
really
right?
nailed it.
Yeah, sorry, very eloquent. It's been, while these Perrier energizers are amazing, that cooped with 4 cups of coffee this morning have not done me any favors. But I'm very awake and very alert right now. So, yeah, no, for sure. I mean, look, I think what we're saying is that it's relationship based, right? That it's personal mentorship, which sort of makes it hard because I think all of us in this industry, especially if you're running a program, what you're trying to do is you're trying to be a teacher and a mentor to your team. But a lot of times that's sort of contrived because you have to set up a system in order to do it, right? And I think I've always found it interesting because I think the best mentorships or the best relationships between a mentor and a mentee is something that happens naturally through connection and through relationships. So we'll go into that in a bit. But for me, I would love to hear from you what the benefits or the benefits that you've seen of incorporating mentorship programs versus just teaching programs into your into your work, into your establishments.
Want to go first, Meaghan?
Sure. I think for me, so I really, once we started growing, had to reevaluate how I was doing things because I was so used to doing it all by myself and it was mostly up here. Understanding how different people learned, but also that it would give me the freedom to do more things and have a life in a way. But also, so being transparent about, all the tools that we have, the training, the manuals, but also I think having this culture of mentorship is also a culture of abundance. Like there is more for everyone. I want someone to want to be me someday or do something similar to me. I don't want to have the feeling that it's very separate and for me to stay here, you can't get to a certain point. So I think there's a culture around that of mentoring people means you want them to succeed, right?
Yeah.
So there's more room for us to do well, maybe within the company and maybe without. So I think it's also kind of an attitude that you bring to work every day, that you want feedback from people if they need something else, if they feel supported. Like right now with everything that's gone into reopening, it's like it's been so stressful, but also I want to keep the people that are here that, I'm constantly asking, like, do you have what you need? How could this be better? Like, do you feel like, be honest if you're feeling overwhelmed and like, let's find a way to figure it out. So I think it also means like open lines of communication as well.
Yeah, I mean, I find that obviously everything you said really relevant and incredible in that for me, at least when I started in this industry, I viewed it in a very specific way. I actually didn't love the industry because I thought that people were so closed and it was very much about me as an individual, not me, but a person as an individual. People would go to bars to see a specific person and that person would build their name or reputation through what they did. And as you said, as you continue to grow, like you're used to doing everything yourselves and then you need to set systems in place in order to grow. But something that happened, and I don't know why it happened or when it happened, but I'm glad it happened. And I sort of think a big part of the CAP program was this idea of apprenticeship and mentorship, is that the community became a lot more giving. It went from being sort of about secrets and became more about like, let's share all of this knowledge. So I find it interesting to say that, you want everyone to be you that works for you, because obviously that's not the idea of most people when they start working. I think.
Yeah, I've had the same feelings as you, I think at certain points in the industry, and also like having a focus on a bar and a venue versus my own personality or a personality that works with me, I think was a difference in how I operated from a lot of people, and I'm glad to see it changing.
Yeah.
But also, if everybody knew what we did, like we wouldn't get to do all the cool things that we do. And I just think like more good drinks for more people means like we all have more opportunities.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Alex, you had a different path than we did. You started working at these really renowned cocktail bars right off the bat. How did you see the industry in that way, and how have you seen it change or grow or stay the same? I don't even know.
Yeah, I did start in the industry at some pretty bad dive bars in the East Village, and really was very fortunate to kind of crest in to the cocktail industry, coinciding with some life changes and deciding grad school is a terrible idea, and really like being in the right place at the right time. But you're totally right. I was benefited by, that culture, the very small culture that existed, and the attention that was being given to a small group of bars and bartenders, and lots of problems with that. But it was what it was at that time. And that gate didn't necessarily give me the perspective that I think both of you had on the industry as a whole and kind of its faults. I think I was, in the machine of just getting to learn every single day from these people who were seen as the mentors or the people in the industry. And through that, I think there was a lot of benefit, like there was a lot of connection to these people that I got to pick their brain every single day, that I was able to learn what was perceived of as mastery at that point in the industry, which is just great to look back at now, and kind of pick apart, and really to feel a part of something that was bigger than myself. And I think that maybe is one of the, for me as an operator now that I reflect on the things that drew me specifically to Death & Co. before I was a partner there and wanting to work there, it was this feeling of connectivity that existed within the staff that you felt from the other side of the bar. And it was them doing something together as a team and interacting together in a very meaningful dialogue on a daily basis. And I think about that as kind of more the ephemeral benefits of having mentorship exist within a bar or between people that work in a establishment or within a company. And there's, I think there's like ephemeral stuff, and then there's like more tangible things. And I really think those ephemeral things, if built well and those relationships kind of forged meaningfully, will contribute to the practical things, which is like retention of staff because they're happier. It relates to even like down the scale a little bit, because you are mentoring and teaching skills, but also mentoring. It requires you to be like really good at what you do, to know what you're talking about so fucking well, and requires a certain level of mastery that's even beyond what you probably thought going into it. But then beyond that, it's just like, it gives, frankly, a greater sense of purpose to the whole thing. Like I think that our industry is imbued with tons of things that could be very easy to call hyperbolic, that they mean more than they actually are. It's just booze in a glass, right? But there's something about a lot of aspects to it that we all find more meaningful, and be that the ritual of making a beautiful cocktail and presenting it to a guest and having their reaction, or the fulfillment that comes and the sense of purpose that comes with cultivating talent that then like goes beyond what you were even capable of. And I think that speaks, Meaghan, to kind of what you were saying with, wanting people to know everything and become you. And I really think it, like, for a lot of people now, or a number of people that I respect most, it's like, yeah, I want you to know everything I know, but I want to see you go beyond me. Like that sounds amazing in almost like a selfish human level. I want to experience what your brain and heart is capable of doing.
Yeah, I mean, I think, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I agree with the being just so rewarding part. Like when I walk into Dear Irving and it's just like rocking and the vibe is really good. And I literally just got there. I didn't have anything to do with setting up. It's just like, it's such a good feeling.
Totally. The best feeling.
I mean, I think it's also like one of those other benefits of mentorship, right? Where not only are you giving, it's a relationship you're also taking as well. So yeah, I mean, personally, it's a little selfish in that way. You also want to learn if you're giving something. And I think through every mentor-mentee relationship, you do learn quite a lot. And it might not be the things that you think you're going to learn. It might be about relationships with people. It might be just about management of people. And it might be about yourself too. I think that some of my biggest life lessons have come through mentoring somebody and realizing, oh, wow, there might be a weakness in me on this part, because this person might have challenged me in a way that, I never thought about, which I find really cool. And, you talk about retention, which is huge right now. And I think everyone in this Zoom call probably knows that there's a huge labor shortage in our industry, and it's not only here, it's globally. So retention is really important. But another important part of mentorship to me has also been recruitment. So not only do you retain people, but if those people are happy and they continue growing, they bring their friends and they tell their friends. So to me, that's been one of our biggest tools. I mean, we just opened in London, and it's so interesting to see the differences in culture and the community between even New York and London, or New York and LA, or just the US and London. And it's been really hard to find staff. And a big part of that is because of Brexit. And I think we had to hire 150 people. We could only get 70 staff members in the beginning. But we've been growing slowly, and a lot of that has been coming through recruitment internally of staff members, having friends that have worked in places where there is no such thing as mentorship. And I think that's sort of, we'll talk about some of the challenges of mentorship, but I think that's also one of the downfalls of expansion, in that you need to become more systematic. And a lot of times that's what you lose. You lose that sort of peer learning mentorship aspect of it. When you grow to a level that, I don't even know how TK does it, because he runs, how many bars did you run till now? Like 560?
We were 14.
14. I thought it was more than that, but no, but when you're even at that level, I think that you need to set up systems in place in order to just continue putting out a good product. But some of the times what you lose is that aspect of peer learning or mentorship. So obviously there's a lot of benefits to mentorship, but it's not easy. It's really hard. And there's also a lot of challenges. So Meaghan, can you talk to me about some challenges that you've gone through in incorporating mentorship in your programs, and sort of how you've gotten through that?
Yeah, I mean, part of it, and when you were saying like this can be a learning experience for both of us, it's always great to have fun conversations with people when things are going well, or you have an opportunity to promote them. It's hard to give people bad news or to walk them through a challenge that they're having. And it's hard for me personally, like that is a personal thing that I've had to work on, is like how to have these conversations. So like, I guess examples are always better, but my head bartender at Dear Irving, technically could do it all, right? Like had to learn ordering and some inventory. That's a program that we can teach him. But when it became really challenging was when he was training someone else, and that was his first kind of one-on-one training, and the expectations he had of how people learn, it's going to be exactly like he learns, and why don't they just watch and do? And like that kind of more nuanced conversation of, well, you have to meet people where they are, and maybe it's not reading, maybe they have to physically do it, or vice versa. And it's as much about you learning as the other person learning when you're in this kind of role. So like we got there, but it was, I think, hard for both of us to because before it kind of been all good news so far, and then you kind of get to this challenge point, and you have to work through it, and it's hard on both sides. And it's hard, I think, for people to speak up. And what I really want is a culture of like, tell me about a problem before it's so bad that you might leave, which is where a lot of us are right now. It's like, we want to try to fix it early. Don't get just so frustrated that you go look for something else, and again, those are hard conversations to have, but really necessary.
I always find it really interesting that in the very old school type of restaurant management, you learn it's like you cannot be friends with your staff, right? Once you're a manager, there needs to be that like veil of separation. But that goes against everything that mentorship is about, because we talk about its relationships, and you're building a relationship with a person. And I don't know about you, but like it's hard for me to build a relationship with somebody and not like care and have like attachment and like a friendship level in that way. So you're right, it is super hard when you do have to have those difficult conversations. But I think it's a learning experience, and I think for me, that was one of the hardest things I had to learn right away too. But then I think it teaches you that you need to be consistent, that you need to treat everyone in the same way. Now, Alex, what are some of the challenges you faced through building a mentorship program?
I think really similar. Well, first, want to acknowledge that as we've grown, like the aspect, the kind of architecture that was a program or systems to help support mentorship have been a really big challenge for us. Because so much of it is based. And I was taught, and how mentorship was understood to me, as a very intuitive relationship between kind of two people that connect. And I think, Meaghan, you were saying this, like, you train a bunch of people, and then like there's a couple of people you just really connect with, and then you build this relationship with them. So how do you teach other people to do that? And while also likely mentoring those people that are meant to be mentoring other people. And that is, I think, a huge challenge and something that I am trying every single day to get better at, because for all the practical and more ephemeral reasons are imperative for our success as a company and our ambitions for growth in a kind of market that we're in right now. But I think, kind of starting with just what does it mean to, what are some of the actual challenges of mentorship on an individual or systematic level? It's living up to your commitment, like being a mentor and entering into this relationship is buying into a lot. It's a lot more than showing up every day. It's not punching in, it's not punching out. It's follow through. It's cultivating the relationship and having the other person be having a two-way street, right? Because it's not just one way. And that to me is really time consuming. As a lot of us get a lot busier, our bandwidth gets shorter, we take on more responsibilities. Or in my case, I moved away from interacting so specifically with every single person in the company that I used to a couple of years ago, to now really just management tier on a daily basis. And as much as I can on the individual venue level, that's really tough to, like, for me personally, to feel that level of fulfillment in mentorship that I used to. So I guess that was mostly me ranting about how unhappy I am about my own execution of mentorship right now.
I mean, I fully feel you. I mean, in opening, even just going from 11 Madison Park, where there was 4 of us and, we had such a tight relationship, then growing into the Nomad. So expanding from one place to 2, you get really busy. And then the people that were your mentees, who then have become mentors, sort of feel like the light is dimmed on them, and like they no longer are important, because now you're investing all of your time in a larger group of people.
Sure.
That's something that I've had to learn and that I'm still dealing with. Like, how have you gotten through those hurdles?
I mean, the times where I haven't gotten through them well is not being honest about it or reflective about it, right? And I think that the best way to get through them is through kind of an honest reflection of the state of the relationship and trying to be proactive. Sorry, I'm not sure if you were still working there at the time, but at Normandy and Walker in LA, we were open for a bit there, and then we were opening Death & Co. Denver, which was by far our most logistically ambitious situation, let alone other aspects of it that were ambitious. For us, it's coming from tiny little cocktail bars, but in those early days, I spent a lot of time building Normandy and Walker, and specifically Walker in this this aspirational situation that could only have happened if Devin and I's brains seeped into the people that work there. And then very suddenly I was physically living in Denver, and I was not able to engage everyone the way I was. Yeah, sure, I'm trying to engage over Slack or be a part of it, but I'm not physically there any longer. Yeah. And recognizing that at some point down the line, after damage had been done, was really I would almost say traumatizing to what I saw myself, I saw my position in the company and with these people to be.
Yeah, I went through the same thing, especially once we opened LA. Going from Nomad in 11 Madison Park and going to LA, I came back from that experience and I had a whole new set of babies over there that or mentees over there that I've been working with. And when I came back, I just remember looking around and seeing things that were slightly different than how I left it. And I made the rookie mistake of asking why and trying to correct those things right away, instead of sort of thanking everyone for all the work that they've done while I've been gone. And my biggest lesson there was that I didn't communicate well enough. I didn't communicate well enough to my staff in a way that I taught them and gave them the tools that they were supposed to be the mentors, and they were going to be leading the staff in that way. And I still wanted to have a little bit too much control over everything. And then you realize, well, people do build up a little bit of resentment, because no matter how close you are, when you go away and you can't give them that time without communication, people become a little resentful, and it's on you. And I really had to look at that and sort of figure out how to change not only our training, but our culture in general, and how to change our style of communication. Thank you, Kyle. Sorry about that. Have fun making dinner. Sorry. my ADHD just goes right off there. It's like squirrel. No, but I really had to learn from that because it was not only really disheartening for me coming back and seeing that things were different, not necessarily were they worse, they were just different. And actually in a lot of ways they were better. But, you know, having to realize that communication needs to be better, but also having to realize that I was trying to mentor everyone and I was fostering a relationship of mentorship, but I wasn't giving people the tools or giving them maybe the affirmation for them to understand that they were the mentors now and that they were going to be sort of making decisions and leading these decisions. So, I mean, I would love to talk about expansion. You know, Alex and Meaghan, both of you recently, well, pre-pandemic expanded from, you know, one location to many. Alex, I mean, with all the consulting work that you've done, I can't even imagine how many people you've mentored along the way. How have you built or sort of scaled up this culture of mentorship? And what have been your biggest hurdles and what have you learned from that?
Yeah, I think I'll address kind of the consulting side in a second, because I think it's really fascinating. Because you, as you know, you've dipped your toes in this too. It's you know, you can only, and maybe I'll start there actually, because I think it's really fascinating because you know, you're there for ostensibly a set amount of time, right? You are there to do a job and you know, make an impact and probably get a paycheck out of it, right? But I almost think about it as like micro mentoring when you're, you know, you probably don't have control of the full ecosystem of the bar or restaurant or hotel or whatever it is that you're consulting on, but you have control or impact into a small part of it. And to me, I feel like that personal level of engagement is almost like, it's almost like more dramatic. It needs to be more dramatically applied in that short window of time you have, because really when you form those relationships, you get people to buy in more to what you're trying to get them to do. Technically, do you need to do that for a lot of consulting? Maybe not. You know, will people really know? But it's just so much more fulfilling to do so. And the practical side of it is, I can't tell you the amount of people that we have trained and helped open restaurants and bars for, that because we formed a relationship with them in that quick time period that was much faster than if we were opening our own place, that we were able to form a relationship that they ended up coming to work for us in the future, or we were able to keep in contact with. And so, you know, I think Devin and I, my partner Devin Tarvey and I, have really talked about this a lot. And one thing we're going to miss as we move a bit away from consulting is really just that impact you can have with changing a group of people's lives that didn't expect it. And I see that more in consulting than in our regular body of work, that people kind of know what they're getting into. You know, if you're going to try and get a job at Death & Co, you probably expect a high level of expectations and, you know, a whole litany of things. But if I'm coming in to help train a bar team at a movie theater in the Valley in Los Angeles, I didn't hire those people. They come from a very different world than I came from. I'm potentially providing them a whole new set of skills. And to your point earlier, they're teaching me a lot too about their perspectives around cocktails, drinking culture, et cetera. So that's kind of my feeling about how consulting can be really powerful on this like different version of mentorship.
Yeah, well, we have a few questions. Zara's asking, how do we incorporate our mentorship from one-on-one to making room for peer mentorship to take over, as it would be difficult for your mentees to initially take a lead, as that may not be the way that they work. Yeah, look, this is something that I ask every day, and something that I really go back to every day. But for me, it started more so looking back at our structure in our company. So I looked at the way that we train, and I looked at, I sort of looked into other companies and saw how they worked. And I never wanted to be like, no offense to anyone that works for this company, like an MGM, where there's so much red tape, you run so many places that everyone only understands a very small part of their role. But I did look into some other companies and see sort of how it was structured, and really started changing the way that we did everything. So for us, we always only hired from the bottom up. Meaning that you would always start either as a busser, an assistant server, or a porter or a dishwasher, and you could get promoted through the hierarchy because you would learn from the people above you. That to me changed a lot of the dynamic, because when we opened Nomad in New York, obviously you hire everyone from the top down because it's a new opening. But without really integrating that culture in the beginning, I found that anybody new that came in, people were integrating the way that they had worked in other places to train. So I really created or tried to create a culture of mentorship but not really define it as a culture of mentorship. I think for me, like Meaghan mentioned this earlier, I try to start teaching everyone why we do things instead of how we do things. So obviously I would teach them specifically how we do things, but then I would always give them the why, and I would let them know that every rule that we make is meant for a reason, but every rule is also meant to be broken. So that's why I wanted them to understand the why. And then in doing that, I realized that I had to relinquish a lot of my power or a lot of my say and give it to my team. Because obviously they've worked with me for a long time, and they've incorporated so much of themselves into these programs as well that they should be able to take the lead. So for us, it was about hierarchy. It's about hiring. So there's a hierarchy, but then there's also a culture of sort of peer teaching and a culture of respect and a culture that it's cool to care. We started hiring people based on their personality, not on their skill set. So if somebody came in and they could have been the best bartender in the world, but they didn't fit into the program because they weren't a team player, like they would never come and work for us. I'd rather hire somebody that has no clue what they're doing, but is an amazing person and is just like willing to put in the time and effort, because those people have become some of my most incredible employees. So from there, I looked at hierarchy. So we had, a busser, a bartender, and then head bartenders, and then bar managers and bar directors. So everyone sort of had a job in mentoring each other. But you're right, it's difficult when some people don't have those leadership qualities. So that's why we had sort of like interim leadership along the way. So instead of going to your bar manager, you have a head bartender that you can go to. So, but we also put it that there was even that there is a structure, that structure exists, but also it's not unattainable. You can speak to anyone at any given time because everyone is equal within the company. But in terms of working, you do go through that structural system. So it's not easy. It's super hard to do. And it takes a lot of time, but I think all of that really, really does start with defining and creating a culture, which I think a lot of people don't do. And a lot of people don't sit there and think about, who are we? What do we stand for? How do we define ourselves? And really putting a vocabulary to that so people can understand and look at a vocabulary and understand that that's what they're supposed to emulate. So for us, we did it as simple as creating an evergreen statement or a mission statement. And then after that, creating a list of words. And those words are words that defined who we wanted to be as a company. I hope that answered that question, but I would love to hear from Meaghan and Alex, sort of how you've done that along the way.
Well, I will say that I'm trying to figure that out along the way. Because like, for example, where we're at now, I've never really been in a position where we're hiring for everywhere all the time. Like it was always, all the bars were in a good place and that's why we're doing something new. And now it's like everywhere needs help. So I'm really working on my training program so that the head bartenders can take over more of it. But also I think the more recent conversations about the culture of mentorship and peer-to-peer conversations have been with the managers, and we have some new managers that are great, but them taking over more a feeling of ownership over the venue, and not in some way like they can't wait for me to be around every time, because it's not major conversations or major problems, but like I want them to feel like to have that conversation that night or after that shift about certain things. So I think that's the changes that we're working on right now, is having people more agency in each venue, so that they're not waiting for me necessarily to be there, because unfortunately it's like I'm pulled in a lot of directions at the moment.
Yeah. And I think at a certain part, it's diminishing returns, right? If you can't make those decisions and your team suffers.
And I also like I said, like I want them to grow into that, and of like growing does come with these good and bad sides of like you're doing more, you have more responsibility, or you're making more money, but it comes with these conversations, that you're taking over, to make sure that, like we were saying, really it's the philosophy and the why and the experience that we're passing on, because I look at it as like different chapters of Dear Irving. There'll be different people, different personalities, but hopefully it just lives up to what everyone knows each time as Dear Irving, with these kind of little tweaks and turns.
And that's why it's so amazing to me, your programs, because it always just continuously gets better, which isn't the same for a lot of programs. And I think that's a big part in the way that you manage. Alex, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, just to grow on this, which I think, again, you were talking to specifically, even though, or you were talking about, but Leo, you mentioned specifically is this notion of culture. And it's a word that gets thrown around so much, but I don't think you could build a system or culture of mentorship with really without truly understanding your culture and what motivates people to buy in. And I reflecting on what you just said, Leo, like I'm surprised I didn't bring it up earlier because it was transformative for us, like starting about 4 years ago, really defining what mattered to us, and going through the exercises that seem hokey as all hell, which is, defining your core values, your mission statement, value, purpose, proposition, all these things. And, a particular system that we use called EOS that gives us a shared language, but that shared language.
What does the EOS stand for?
Entrepreneur Operating System. It's based on a book called Traction by Gino Wickman. Highly recommend it. If anyone wants to learn how to apply it to a hospitality venue, it's fascinating stuff.
Awesome.
But that in doing so, that allowed us at least one shared language, like you mentioned, like beyond helpful to say, oh, we're talking about our processes or standard operating procedures. What language are we using for things that we all think we know? And then beyond then, you can break through that more technical stuff as you're on the same page and really start to fly. You can do a lot more and really get to like what motivates people, right? And do you guys know Chip Conley, who wrote, who was he started Joie de Vivre Hotels. He wrote a book called Peak, which I just find fascinating. And yeah, that's the book, Alex Smith. And he wrote this book, which is really applying the ideas of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? You're basically like, everyone wants to be psychologically safe, and then they want to actually be physically safe, and then belonging is safe, and then self-actualization at the top. But really in the venue of business and hospitality, it's money. People need money to survive, and then they can move beyond that. And then it's getting recognition is being huge. And part of mentorship is recognition of people's successes and challenges and helping them through those. And then beyond that, the very top of the pyramid is meaning, a sense of meaning, right? And so just simply like making decisions by way of knowing what your values, what is important to you as a group of people are, as well as what motivates people, I think can really help shaping whatever a mentorship program and frankly, a healthy business and culture looks like for you.
It's interesting for me because expansion has been my biggest tool to continue growing and learning. In a weird way, it's also been the hardest thing I've ever done. And I'm not going to lie, we've failed in a lot of ways and we've learned from that, and hopefully we continue to grow. But every time that you write a new service manual, or anytime that you write a new culture manual, or anytime that you write a new training manual, I've really read it and been like, does this make sense anymore? And a big part of that for us is, we started incorporating the why quite a few years ago. And I think it was after we came back from LA, because I started seeing people do things the way that they were taught. And I was really upset, even though I taught them to do it that way. But I realized that I never taught them why. And it's great, really. I mean, it takes more effort to define why you do absolutely everything. But it was also a good exercise for us as a leadership team to really think about why we do things. And then we realized some of the things that we were doing maybe weren't the best courses of action. And then we sort of changed that. But it's great for me to see now, like we opened London and we're starting to hire new team members because we didn't open all of the venues at once. And it's amazing to see the peer training now and seeing some of our bartenders and our barbacks that have grown to bartenders now training the other team members in the same exact way and being like, well, no, this is why you're doing this. And it's really amazing to see that application. There's quite a lot of questions and I want to get in all of them. So Kyle, do you mind unmuting and explaining your question a little bit more, because I'm a little dense and don't understand it?
No worries. Thanks. So my question basically revolves around stepping outside of the bar and restaurant group and more into looking at the other skills. So like, as we look at, all the different people that are in this room, they might do sales jobs after bartending or management or whatever, and finding mentors that can sort of help open up other doors. And also just, especially for people that, like, I live in a small community in Hawaii. If you're looking for gaining skills above you, you can't just look in your own community. So I think that's what I'd like for you guys to touch on if you can. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, to me, that's something that I've struggled with a bit. Most of the stuff that I do is by following people through podcasts or through their YouTube videos. Simon Sinek is one of, the most incredible people when it comes to management for me. That's sort of why we got into the why of things. But I don't know. I mean, maybe Meaghan or Alex could sort of talk about this. I've never really gone out and sought mentorship from a person that I have not known. For me, it's always been through networking events. And to be honest, the CAP program has been one of the biggest ones for me. Not only have I hired most of my team through the CAP program, but I've learned more from the CAP program than anywhere else. But I've also just have networked and been introduced to so many incredible people that I've been able to reach out to and ask questions for, and naturally have built relationships with them in a way that mentorship, sort of blossomed. But yeah, what options have you seen out there to try to source a mentor in the outside world? And if anyone has a good one for sort of business, please let me know, because I'm looking for one.
Well, actually, I have a friend that found kind of a mentor relationship on Clubhouse, which I've only been on a couple times, but maybe because it's like an audio chat room. So there'll be like rooms where you go into and there'll be a topic, but you don't see everyone. It's not like a Zoom like this, like just audio.
Okay.
So they'll be on very specific topics. So you can just scroll through and see what's coming up or who's chatting now. But I had a friend that reached out to someone because, these weekly chats that they were doing just were really resonating. And I think even if you don't know someone, you're really like, you come informed as to what they actually do and why it impacts you, and you're respectful of their time. I think a lot of people are quite happy to share, especially if they're already doing podcasts or chats or seminars.
Yeah, I think that's important to note, like being respectful of somebody's time. I think all of us have had a lot of people DM you. And some of the relationships that I've built through people that I don't know have always been from people that have done their research and have had very specific questions, but also have been, as you said, sort of respectful in that way of like, hey, I understand that you're really busy, but like, I'm having this issue. Can you help me with it? And I've actually built quite a few amazing relationships in that way. But it does become, I'm not going to lie, a little difficult when people just ask generic questions because I don't know how to answer that sometimes. When somebody's like, how do you do what you do? And I'm like, I mean.
let me break it down for you.
Yeah, it's kind of a writing your biography for someone.
But Kyle, I think honestly, I've actually written a few people, which I never thought I would do, but I wrote Simon before we actually ever knew him, just on Instagram, and he wrote me back, and then I was able to build a relationship with him because of like the Welcome Conference, which if it does come back, that's an amazing opportunity or
it's a
amazing
great conference, yeah.
But a lot of people, you'd be surprised. Like if you just reach out, a lot of people are really eager to share their wealth of knowledge.
And I would say look beyond your community, right? Like the two things I mentioned that had the biggest impact on me recently have nothing to do with the hospitality. Well, Chip Conley does, but a very different version of it. And those aren't my mentors, the writers of those books, but people related to those ideas have become as I've grown as a business owner and as a manager and as somebody who teaches and trains and mentors managers, looking beyond my own echo chamber, which I think our industry should repeat ad nauseum constantly, that we need to get out of our echo chamber to get new ideas and fresh perspective. And for me, that has manifested. I actually have a business coach that I meet with my team and I meet with on a quarterly basis that gets us the hell out of our heads and gives us a fresh perspective. And yeah, we pay him money, but I would 100% consider him a mentor to my entire team and certainly to me in my position in the company.
Amazing. Yeah, I mean, and if you're looking for some people that you could get on YouTube, I think Steve Jobs, he does the commencement speech, the graduation speech. I forget which university it is, but it's one of the most amazing videos. I've seen it a bunch of times. I could try to email it to Alex after this because I'll look for it and she could send it out. Brene Brown, anything that she does is pretty amazing. Simon Sinek, anything that he does is pretty amazing. You may not agree with all of it, but at least having a different mindset and understanding why you do something differently makes sense too. Like I sometimes listen to people that I may not agree with just to see if I could get a different perspective or just to solidify the things that that I'm doing. Daniel, you had a question too. Do you want to unmute and ask?
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Oh, hey guys. I just want to, first of all, obviously, thank you guys for taking the time to kind of speak to us from your own point of perspectives and give us some information and stuff. And I have a question to, to all the entire group, and it's really kind of a twofold, I think, but I think also it's something where it's really open for you guys to kind of run with it and maybe link them together. The first one being the bar industry sometimes can be so level like, where you're operating at pubs and taverns, and then you start moving to restaurants where they have wine programs and beer programs more curated, and then you start to see high value cocktail bartending. I feel like as a bartender who hasn't had the experience or the name of like a Clover Club or a PDT or a Death & Co under your belt, sometimes I feel like it's a little hard as a bartender to then reach out to these establishments that are so well known and say, hey, I'm looking for a mentor and I would love to spend time here and I want to be a part of this community. And how do you battle when you feel like it's a very closed door society at times? And to speak to that, my only other hanger question to that was, as hiring managers yourself, how do you guys then filter through so many people who are coming to you and being like, I want to do this and I want to be a part of this, and what are the key attributes you look for? So I don't know if that's a question or a rant or
I think it's a lot of questions.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Whatever
good,
part you guys can answer.
No, I think it's an amazing question. I mean, one of you want to start? I'm happy to do it.
I have thoughts too. First of all, if you're looking right now, it's a great time to maybe make a change. But also, I think it's unfortunate if you had that experience, and I know that happens, but like Leo was saying, I really try to hire based on like personality and what people can bring to the table. What turns me off from interviews is when people feel like, I've done this, I've checked it off my list. I worked at a 3-star restaurant, I worked at a cocktail bar, I worked at a hotel, but they've never talked about when they got to the point that they were giving something back, right? Because we're taking a lot of time to like train people, get them invested, to then if they feel like, oh, it's 6 months, a year, I checked it off and now I'm going to do the next resume thing. Like, I want people that want to be an asset, that are not neutral, of course, not taking anything away, causing problems, but not neutral, but like giving back to the bar. And a lot of this is repetitive, right? We're making the same drinks, saying the same things night over night, but finding a new way to do it, helping us build regulars. Like, the thing I love about my bar is like, I'm in the background of like all these people's, like, sometimes regular nights, but big nights, date nights, celebrating jobs. Like, I want someone that of course is invested about the drinks and the service, but like wants to be a part of that. And that's why I think hiring on personality right now, I'm glad it's more people are talking about it, but I think it's really essential. And I hope you keep looking if you feel like the door has been closed on you before.
Yeah, I would say humility goes a long way. I have a lot of people that apply and I tell them if they have to start as a bar back, and they're like, no, I'm a bartender, respectfully, I'm not going to do that. And I understand that financially all of us can afford to do that. But if you really want to be a part of the community and you want to learn the way that, certain places do things, sometimes you have to humble yourself. I would respect somebody that would tell me, hey, I'm so sorry, I really can't, I would love to, but I can't do it financially right now. And then I would try to figure out a way to make it work. But people that just tell me that they're above that, that's a huge red flag for me, because I don't think anyone's above anything. Like, I've had people that have run programs and have bar back for me and become bartenders and head bartenders and bar managers. And then I would think the other thing, people are really bad interviewers. And I feel like, sadly, I don't know if people were never taught in school, but like a little bit of research goes a long way. And it's funny because when I was hiring before, I used to say, if they haven't done the research, there's no way they're getting a job here. And I obviously changed my hiring practices. So I have like 2 different lines of like questioning that I do because so many people do not do their research. And I always start off by asking them, by greeting them and then asking them, how they heard about this place and why they're here. And I would say, sadly, 80% of the time, people are like, oh, I just saw a job ad. So if I would say no to all those people, I would have zero employment, 0 employees, but a little bit of research goes a long way. So get on Google, look at their website, look at their menus and see what they do. And then also, answer honestly, but I would also say don't answer too honestly sometimes. And I probably shouldn't say that out loud. Like, if you were let go from a place because you were a shithead and you've grown from that, then don't say, oh yeah, like I'm not there anymore and badmouth the place because of why you're not there. But I think it's okay to say like a story of redemption. Like, hey, I was, I wasn't the person I am now, and I probably wasn't the best employee, and it really made me learn and change who I want to be. And it really made me like solidify why I want to be in this industry. For me, a story of redemption and goes a long way. And you don't need to give more information than what's asked. I'll say that much.
If I could add to, which I completely agree with both of what you said. I think one thing that is related to that is curiosity, and something I look for and try to like find an inroad to in people. And it's not just curiosity for the bar industry or cocktails or cocktail history. It's about some curiosity that an individual has for something in the world, something that they love that is beyond themselves or beyond the work that they're here to do. Because I don't know about you guys, but I get so many people who are like, well, this is my life and the only thing I care about is cocktails. I'm like, I doubt it. And please don't let that be true, because it's just not there. There's a lot more to experience out there. And for us, we really were challenged by, especially when we started doing consulting and opening more places, that it was hard to get that information out of people. And we spent a long time developing a hiring process, which honestly, if you just go to our website, deathandcompany.com, and you check it out, you'll see various what we call hiring portals, which are a series of questions and also some prompts, us saying, hey, these are our core values. Do any of these resonate with you? And also, what else do you care about in life? And that, to your question about filtering, becomes one of the first ways for us to say, oh yeah, this person is engaged at least this first step, and then we can go to our kind of 2 steps beyond that. And then as we all do, constantly evolving, never kind of settling. Now, as we're doing lots of work with DEI, we're looking at that portal and being like, wow, this isn't actually very equitable. It doesn't provide somebody who speaks a different language to apply. It certainly infers that everyone has internet access readily. A lot of things that are a big issue for us, but ultimately the spirit of what it has been really transformative for us and really cumbersome, because it takes a lot more time to hire by going through all these steps. But the end result is just like a phenomenally high level of retention.
Yeah, and Daniel, something else that we're trying to do, and like Alex, we looked at all of our hiring practices and realized, hey, we're probably not as equitable as we could be. But we're trying to, and this is going to take a lot of work, but we're trying to really pair ourselves with places in a city that maybe and I hate using this word, of like a different tier. So maybe like a dive bar, or like, a sort of a mom and pop restaurant that may have similar core values. And we're trying to find somebody that we can partner up with, that we can invest in, and we can give them a bit of training as a whole. And then we could also, once they have sort of people that feel that have outgrown that place and want to continue growing, that we can pull from. I think it's another way of giving back to the community. And we haven't done it yet, but we've been talking about it for the past few months of how to get different sort of feeding systems in, right? But also at the same time, giving back to people that may not have all of that knowledge, and helping other places succeed as a bar or a restaurant. Because we were looking at it before we would hire, it doesn't matter where you went to school, it doesn't matter where you worked before. Our hiring practices never were about sort of experience or education in that way. But we realized that we were doing something really wrong, and we were only going to Ivy Leagues to recruit. So we were going to like the Cornells, Columbias, Yales, NYUs, at Harvards, And we were recruiting from there, which is not the most equitable thing. You know, and we're like, well, how, maybe we go to the community colleges, maybe we go to some of the non-for-profits that are helping people get off the streets to sort of look for hiring practices. And we started doing that pre-COVID, and sadly, you know, we haven't really done much with it since then. But it's something that I think all of us should really think about, and all of us should question.
Which, you know, this feels maybe like a little bit of a tangent, but as like a mentorship topic for the industry as a whole, I think it's probably a conversation to continue having, because, you know, it'll not only on a very practical level, but, you know, broadening the horizons and forging those relationships with mentees and creating mentors from more and more perspectives is, you know, and in opposition to a monoculture. It makes us all stronger, makes our industry stronger, and it's worthy of all the really, really hard work that it requires to get there.
Yeah, fully agree. And I will say also, I know it's not happening as much right now, but you're sort of doing the things that you need to do, right? Like you're in this seminar right now. So I know that if ever I saw your name again and it came up in a resume, I would be really excited to see it, because you're putting in that work and that effort. You may not be working at, you know, Death and Company, but you're coming and networking and learning, and you're interested in it. So there's a lot out there. There's a lot of peer education, but there's also a lot of brand education, and doing things like the CAP program, or just going in any of these industry-led events will definitely help you. The last thing I'll say about interviewing is, yes, people check social media. So I think the bartending community sometimes builds a culture that it's like, we're too cool, and it's cool to not care. And I don't think I'm that cool. I think I like the dorks. I like people that want to play like Magic the Gathering with me, but I also like people that like cocktails. I can't tell you how many people, when I interview them, they're like, oh, I don't drink cocktails. And I'm like, okay, cool, great. And I think a lot of times it's not that people don't drink cocktails, it's because they feel like if you're a bartender, you need to drink Fernet or whiskey and a side of like an IPA. Yes, Cooper, magic. We should continue. All right, well, I know that we've gone over, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but if anyone has any other questions, I'm happy to stay on and answer it. But Alex says that I'm only allowed to do it for another 8 minutes because I'm not allowed. Does anyone have any other questions? I mean, obviously this is a really, I mean, we're just hitting the tip of the iceberg when it comes to mentorship. And obviously, as you see, Alex, Meaghan, and I, none of us have all the answers. And it's something that we were excited to do when Alex approached us, because it's something that we've all been thinking about and that we've all struggled with in the past. And I was excited to come on here and learn as much from both of them as I've sort of talked about.
Same.
Sorry,
Yeah,
Zara, you have a question?
I
I just wanted to be respectful of people's time. As you said, Alex said that there's only 8 minutes, so we could do it at another time.
No, ask away. It's okay.
I was wondering how you differentiate between mentorship once you have a mentee and personal development for that mentee, whether your mentees are part of a team and you're mentoring them as a team, and then versus an individual's personal development.
That's a good question. I mean, for us, there's a few people that I look at my team as a family, and I look at my team as I'm a mentee to all of them if they want it, if they want to put in that effort. But for me, I've just changed the way that we do training, and I changed the way that we work. So everyone sort of does peer-to-peer training and peer-to-peer mentorship. So, I mean, that's a hard question in that I think it's personal and different for every single person. So for me, it's more about creating a culture, getting everyone to buy into that culture, really living and perpetuating that culture, but also making sure that every single person that comes on board understands that they're going to learn a lot in the beginning, but then their job is to also teach and mentor. I don't know if that answered your question, but I'll let Alex and Meaghan take a stab at it.
Yeah, Zara, of course, typical great questions that make me think a little too deeply. You know, I guess before this question, I would have put these two things in maybe different camps. You know, personal development and mentorship, where mentorship is almost like an incremental relationship that, yes, builds to milestones or helps reach multiple goals over this long relationship. But personal development is such a personal need, you know, and I guess from a systematic way or perspective as an owner and operator, there are a lot of areas that could have personal development be a part of it for every member of our team, and from big picture down to little one. And I'll give you an example. So we realized a few years ago that after kind of coming to the conclusion, we wanted to be an open book company and transparent with all of our staff about our numbers. And that was scary, but then we're like, wait, of course, if people understand that when they have a night that they're like, we made so much money, oh, the owners must be just so rich. But if they truly understand how the business works, they'll understand how that's not true at all. But they will have some context for how we can all row in the same direction to get better at it. And that opened the door to just basic principles of financial literacy, which I was never taught. I never understood. But the moment you open that door to expose the financial realities of a bar, restaurant, hotel, whatever it is, you then can expand from there to financial literacy in people's personal lives, like how to save money, how to actually have a 401k program, and how to not just have it, but teach people how to fucking use it, you know, and how to like get better for themselves. And that's just one example, but I feel like there's, you know, hundreds of examples that way that are not necessarily mentorship, but you are providing, you know, opportunities for people to improve themselves by way of access to information, experts, and to a degree, wisdom.
Something else that we've been implemented for personal growth is, and this is something that's a bit newer for the past few years, is we only used to do reviews for management and up, and now we do reviews for all of our team. And it's a little, I mean, it takes a lot of time, and it's also difficult because you do have to tell people some of the things that you have to be critical of people, right? And they're never easy conversations, and people leaving a review, I don't know if anyone ever leaves a review feeling great, no matter how amazing they are. So for us, it's always been looking at our reviews and figuring out a way of how to praise, but also how to be critical without emotion in that way. But also going into it, letting people know like, hey, you're doing a great job. These are the things that you just need to work on if you want to continue to grow. But I mean, it's also like Alex said, he talked about financial responsibility and teaching people how to read financial statements. It's for us, another thing we've incorporated. We always used to only do leadership and management trainings for managers. I've started doing it for hourly staff members as well. Because a big thing that I noticed is as I would promote people, it's a very different skill set. So you go from being a manager to even a head bartender, and there's like from a bartender to a head bartender, and there's a touch of managerial duties that you do there. But then when you become a manager and you take away that skill set that person was really good at doing, and now they feel like they have no clue what they're doing, how do you prepare somebody for that? How do you support them in that process? And how do you teach them? So a lot of times, to be honest, the best bartenders don't make the best managers. So we've realized that, we started training people at an hourly level about management. And we don't call it management. We call it like, we'll teach them about leadership, but it's something that, not only is important in our industry, it's literally life skills. It's communication skills. It's skills that you have with other people. And I think Meaghan said it before, she had her head bartender, like not understand why somebody didn't learn the way that they did. I talked about consistency, and this sort of goes against that, but it's also important to realize that everyone's different and everyone needs to be managed in a different way. Like I can look at Meaghan and I say, I need you to do this like this, and she'll do it. And then I look at Alex and I say, I need you to do this like this. And he's like, okay. And then he doesn't do it. And I realize, okay, well, maybe I'm not explaining it correctly. So finding out a different way of talking to Alex so that he understands, and maybe that way takes a little bit more effort as a manager or as an employer, but at the long run, it'll give you, it'll be less effort because there'll be less issues, but it'll give you a better solution. Meaghan, do you have any comment on that?
Yeah, I was going to say, I wouldn't say we have like much structure in terms of personal development, but I think sharing, especially opportunities that come my way that are better suited for other people sometimes is important. And sometimes it's a big education thing that everyone's invited to. And sometimes it's an opportunity that I want to give to someone that's really been showing up and doing really well. And I think could represent the bar at this, event opportunity or something like that. So I think that goes in with like the culture of feeling like there's enough for everyone and being transparent about not just in this Dear Irving bubble, but the bigger cocktail world and spirits industry opportunities to learn how the whole thing works.
Amazing. Does anyone have any other questions? If not, just want to thank everyone for listening to me speak because I know it's a burden. I want to thank Alex and Meaghan for doing this with me. I want to thank Alex and Tales of the Cocktail for allowing us to do this. And obviously, what's kept me alive for the last day, Perrier and Cooper Cheatham, thank you so much for being so kind and generous and for producing actually delicious products that we should be consuming.
Thanks, y'all.
Thanks, everyone.